1시간 한 반 정도 강의를 합니다. 그리고 30분 Q&A 받는데 그거는 이제 박 교수님이 알아서 그냥 운영하시면 됩니다. 저는 뭐 전권은 이제 박 교수님이 받으시면 될 것 같고. 자, 그러면 우리 박 교수님, 박소영 교수님 이름도 너무 커먼합니다. 예, 소영팍. 예. 학생분들이 이제 계속 요즘은 딱 온타임에 들어오더라고요. 너무 이게 이 줌에 익숙해져 갖고 미리 들어오진 않습니다. 그래서 10시 시작하겠습니다. 이게 지금 공유한 거 잘 보이시나요?
네네.
네. 그 지난번에 또 보니까 어떤 이상한 사람들이 들어와갖고 해킹을 막 하더라고요. 그래갖고 막 떠들고 막 그런 거 처음 겪어봤는데, 자, 한국이 뭐 미국에서도 실시간으로 많이 보시기 때문에 얼마나 다이내믹한지는 잘 알고 계시죠? 플로리다에서 그 느슨하게 사시는 거하고 한국의 이 서울에서 벌어지는 이 최고조의 다이내믹스를 하룻밤마다 뭐가 확확 바뀌는 이런 훌륭한 나라입니다. 자, 학생 여러분, 우리 이게 세미나이기 때문에 여러분들이 화면을 좀 켜주시면 세미나는 발표하시는 분한테 도움이 됩니다. 피치 못할 사정으로 그 화면을 끄고 계신 분이 있으면 그건 뭐 어쩔 수 없지만, 이거는 수업을 등록한 사람들은 화면을 거의 다 모두 키세요. 수업 시간입니다, 이거. 그리고 세미나로 참석하시는 분들은 세미나에 발표하는 프레젠터를 위해서 화면을 켜주시면 인터랙션을 훨씬 더 효과적으로 할 수 있습니다. 여러분들 검은 화면 보고 강의하라고 하면 기분 별로 안 좋습니다. 그러니까 화면을 켜주시면 강의하시는 분한테 큰 도움이 될 테고, 또 수업으로 지금 등록하신 분들은 학생 신분으로서 꼭 화면을 공개해 주시면 좋겠습니다. 그리고 질문할 땐 당연히 켜고 하시고요. 자, 지금부터 그러면 10시가 됐기 때문에 2022년입니다. 벌써 2022년 새로운 1학기가 시작되고 있고요. 이 융합연구 세미나는 경희대학교 전체 일반 대학원 학생들 대상으로 수업으로 인정돼서 전공 필수 과목으로, 전공 선택 과목으로 수업을 듣는 과목입니다. 그래서 이 과목에 지금 수업 크레딧을 위해서 듣는 사람하고, 그 다음에 이제 세미나를 위해서 듣는 사람들로 이렇게 구분이 되지만, 매주 금요일 날 열리는 세미나고 여러분들한테 큰 도움이 될 거라고 생각됩니다. 자, 그러면 박소영 교수님이 어떤 분인지 잠깐 알고 우리가 세미나를 들으면 도움이 되겠죠. 자, 박소영 교수님은 제가 알고 있기로는 펜실베니아 스테이트 유니버시티의 빙판 교수 밑에서 공부를 하신 걸로 알고 있습니다. 맞나요?
네, 맞습니다.
빙판 교수는 저하고 또 절친 교수님이십니다. 자, 지금은 플로리다 애틀랜틱 유니버시티의 조교수, 어시스턴트 프로페서로 있고, 거기서 하스피탈리티 투어리즘 매니지먼트 프로그램을 에서 이제 연구를 하고 티칭을 하고 계신 것 같습니다. 그 다음에 보통 소셜 미디어, 소셜 데이터 애널리틱스를 석사 때 전공하시고, BS는 배철러 디그리는 이코노믹스, 경제학을 하셨네요. 한국대학교에서 하셨네요. 한국대학교, 코리아 유니버시티에서. 자, 그 다음에 논문은 주로 투어리즘 매니지먼트나 저널 오브 투어리즘 리서치 같은, 그리고 NRS 투어리즘 리서치, 저널 오브 엔바이러먼트 매니지먼트 같은 이름 있는 대학 저널에만 논문을 내시고 계시네요. 좋습니다. 자, 현재 논문은 소셜 데이터 애널리틱스, 소셜 이슈 이런 쪽의 연구를 계속 하시고 있고요. 가장 요즘 핫한 메서드고 도메인이죠, 사실. 그래서 제가 이제 특별히 모셨습니다. 자, 그래서 교육은 리서치 메소드나 마케팅, 뭐 서비스 매니지먼트나 하스피탈리티 매니지먼트를 하고 계신 것 같습니다. 자, 그래서 지금 이제 우리 박소영 교수님께서 한참 이제 연구에 피치를 올리고 계시는 교수님이시고, 지금부터 우리가 1시간 반 동안 강의를 세미나를 듣고 그다음에 뭐 Q&A 하고 그러도록 하겠습니다. 자, 박 교수님, 자, 제가 이 권한을 드릴 테니까 자료를 공유해 주시면 좋겠습니다. 네, 그럼 박 교수님 시작해 주시죠. 네.
네, 소개 감사합니다. 근데 혹시 그 인터내셔널 분도 계신 것 같아서 영어로 하는 게 더 나으실까요?
그렇게 해도 되시고요. 한국말로 하셔도 되고, 뭐 편하실 대로 하십시오. 네.
Since I see some international students also joining us, so I will be talking in English so that we respect all the participants. And thank you very much, Dr. Koo, for introducing me. And as he said, I have a background in econ, but I ended up in tourism management. And this is actually thanks to Kyunghee University. So I am very honored to be the starting person for this amazing global convergence research seminar. Because I studied economics, I needed a lot of guidance when I was applying for my PhD in tourism and hospitality. And I actually randomly emailed professors in Kyunghee University, and they were all very kind enough to let me come visit them in their office, gave me guidance on which university to apply for, and what type of information I needed to provide. So I owe the university a lot, and I'm happy to be back on the campus, at least virtually. So currently I'm an assistant professor in Florida Atlantic University, hence the light clothing. It's very hot here right now. And I'll be talking about social data analytics for smart tourism. Hopefully, this will be an interactive session, so please feel free to stop me at any time for any questions or any comments. And I'll be asking some questions as well, so I hope that you'll be able to speak up, or if you want to, you can also type in the chat. Okay, so I'll just start with a question. What comes to your mind when you hear the word social data analytics? What do we mean by social data analytics?
Text and some note to what I want to say in Facebook.
Yes, Facebook, social media, right? Yes, yes, definitely.
And like a food picture.
Yes, pictures, food, reviews. And as
Reviews?
your reviews, exactly. As Dr. Koo mentioned, it's a new domain. So there is no clear definition on what social data analytics is. So you can Google social data analytics and you may find different definitions of what this is. For me, I think social data analytics is a data-driven approach to analyze a large and complex human interaction data, hence the word social, right? It combines the social science and data science to extract societal value so that we can create policy recommendations and extract practical implications so that we improve the society and solve the issues that happen in society. Why do we need to combine social science and data science, right? Data science is often used to solve a problem really effectively. We use big data, machine learning, econometrics to analyze this data and find an answer. But then social science comes in to actually understand what's behind these issues. Why are humans creating this issue? And combining these two helps us effectively solve the issue at hand, but at the same time, making sure that that issue doesn't occur again. So when we hear the word social data analytics, it sounds like it's a very quantitative approach, right? We think of these people coding things, writing programs, but it's a very qualitative and quantitative approach. So if we want to be apt in social data analytics, we often call these people computational social scientists. You have to know and learn the qualitative and quantitative approach to understand data. So what kind of data do social data analytics use, right? So a lot of variety of data comes from human interaction, like the text data, right? We use natural language processing, NLP, to analyze this. We also see social networks of people, right? How people are connected. And this we analyze using network analysis. Of course, we have spatial and geographic data, and I know that we have a lot of experts here on spatial analysis. And even though we don't think about this a lot, but intensive longitudinal data that we see from governments like census, that also falls under data analytics. And we can analyze this using econometrics, complex statistics, machine learning, and so on. And last but not least, we have image and video data, right? We can use computer vision or crowdsourcing to analyze image and video data. And all these data can be visualized to create practical implications. And of course, this is not the whole type of data that there is, right? We have sensor data, like smart tourism creates a lot of data that's related to Internet of Things, that's creating real-time variety of data. So what can we do with this data and social data analytics in tourism, right? That's our field. So I want to introduce 3 types of data, and I'll try my best to introduce 3 papers that apply to these types of data. First is social networking sites, right? Social media, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, and also review data. And this will have tourist experiences, people post, right? And we'll see text, image, and video from these posts. We see reviews by the customers. And we also see individual and organization networks. So who are these tourists following? Are destination management organizations following each other? All those will be the network data. Then with these social media, we see a lot of geotags, so location data, right? So with the location data, we are able to get spatial data on how these tourists are moving around, where they're from, where's their hometown, where they're traveling to. So all these data can come from social networking sites. We also have secondary data, the longitudinal data. We have reservations, right? Reservations that are longitudinal in large quantity. It can be bought sometimes, or it can be downloaded from government entities. And we have visitor trends like international tourist arrivals, or people, walking into the national parks. All those are the secondary data. And third type of data I want to introduce, the device data. So I think this is most connected to smart tourism, right? We have Internet of Things that will generate image, video, and longitudinal data of people moving around, their experiences, their complaints, all those. And we have sensors like the tracking devices and your smart watches, right? That collect your health information, sometimes even your emotions, your movement. So that also creates sometimes longitudinal data. And we have mobile device and GPS. So a lot of companies are collecting mobile locations, like Near. Near is the representative one I am aware of, and they will collect, where your home is, because they are able to see where you sleep at night most of the times. And they're also able to tell where you travel to and what you do when you're traveling. And this creates spatial. Okay, so I'll try to explain, I will try to show 3 studies that each use these types of data. But before that, I want to ask the students, do you think your research can use social data analytics, or is your research already using social data analytics based on what we discussed so far?
저는 소셜 데이터를 쓰고 있는데 이게 되게 정제하기가 어렵더라고요. 그래서 그냥 데이터 크롤링을 해서 그 트립어드바이저의 그 데이터 크롤링을 해서 호텔의 리뷰 헬프 플레이스는 이제 연구를 좀 해봤고, 그 다음에는 요즘 GPS 데이터하고 렌트카 데이터의 좌표를 가져다가 하는데, 이거는 사실 소셜 데이터는 아니죠. 그냥 GPS 데이터니까. 그래서 이제 GPS 데이터의 좌표를 지도에 찍어서 소셜 데이터를 크롤링을 해서 조금 아까 설명하신 부분하고 이 사람들이 어떻게 움직이는지 모빌리티를 체크하고 그 상황에서 어떤 의견들을 페이스북이든 소셜 미디어에 남기는지, 그러면 이제 우리가 투어리즘 모티베이션을 어느 정도 잡아낼 수가 있잖아요. 그러니까 GPS 데이터는 데모그래픽 디스크립티브 데이터니까 사실 사실은 알 수 있어도 마인드는 알 수가 없으니까, 마인드를 알려면 소셜 데이터를 크롤링해서 이제 붙이는 연구를 지금 하고 있는데, 뭐 그런 연구 정도 하고 있습니다. 네.
Dr. Khu actually pointed out very important limitations of social data, social media data per se. First, a lot of people think using social media data is easy because it's accessible and you can get it whenever you want, but it's not true. It's very dirty. It requires a lot of hours to clean the data. You have to randomly sample a lot of times and manually review. So it will take a lot of time to clean the data. And second, it doesn't tell you why. It can tell you a lot of times if it's a fact, right? It's a quantitative data that you're getting. So you can get yes or no data, but often if you really want to understand why people are doing this, why are people traveling to New York or going to Jeju Island, you have to look at qualitative data, like the text from the social media, or even combine it with interviews and surveys that we actually do in a traditional way, right? I am seeing some comments. I use the secondary data from government and international organizations such as UNWTO. Yes, exactly, right? We use a lot of secondary data, and UNWTO publishes a lot of arrivals data, right, into countries, between countries. As social data at the office, yes. So social media data can be used in a wide range of ways. And one thing I really want to note is that make sure that it's legal to collect data. We see many cases that people use social media data to publish, but we rarely see people confirming if it's legal to crawl, right? This was one of the recommendations from my mentor, Dr. Bing Pan, and he asked me, do you know if Twitter allows you to collect data? And I wasn't able to answer at that time. I had to go through their bylaws and all those, right? So make sure to check that. And you can do that by typing the website and /robots.txt. And it will tell you if you can crawl or not and what kind of information you can crawl. As Dr. Kim, mobile app data sets, mobile data has been so hot, and it just gives you so much information about the behavior of the tourists and locational attributes, right? I haven't used mobile app data recently, but based on the studies that are coming out, it's such a valuable asset for tourism research, because we cannot follow tourists around, right? We cannot just like follow them around to see where they're going. We have to rely on their answers. And by looking at mobile app, you're actually able to see where they're going and how long they're staying at certain locations. So maybe some of your studies that you thought weren't social data analytics might be social data analytics. That's the point I wanted to make with introducing these different data sets and different analysis methods. So let me go right into some of my research. The first research I want to introduce to you is my most recent one, Flourishing Through Traveling While Black, Unfiltered Voices of Black Travelers. This is a very new study. It just got accepted. And it's about the Black travel movement. Have you guys heard about Black travel movement?
It's new keyword.
Yeah, we heard a lot about Black Lives Matter, right? And it showed a very similar trend to Black Lives Matter. So in the US especially, but across the world, Black individuals are affected and have been affected by systemic racism, and that has applied to Black travelers as well. It was very difficult and dangerous for Black travelers to travel alone before, and they had created this green book that showed Black travelers, their colleagues, which hotel can they stay at safely, where can they eat, and the restaurants is this restaurant racist or not? So all those information was shared using a book before. And then this movement moved online, especially on Twitter, because they were not able to see themselves in marketing plans of travel agencies. Like they all see the white faces on the ads, and they weren't able to travel freely. So they created this counter narrative to dispel misconceptions about Black travelers. There was this wide belief that Black people don't travel, which is not true. And they wanted to encourage other Black travelers to travel domestically in the US as well as internationally. And we knew that this movement had taken off around 2010 and had been developing ever since. And we wanted to see if it had changed anything. Are people still just talking about the safety and racism issues, or has the movement changed in its nature? So we explore the Black travelers' experiences independent from other demographics. So we specifically focused on Black travelers. And we wanted to see if and how Black travelers' voices have evolved with the development of the Black travel movement. And last, explore whether and how the experiences of Black travelers map onto models of well-being and flourishing. We have witnessed that a lot of travelers are now pursuing, the well-being, and they want to flourish through travel. But is that also the same for Black travelers, right? I just put this picture down here. This is the website that was created by faculty members, and they just create this timeline of history of Black travel. So if you're interested, feel free to browse.
이 Black Traveler라는 단어가 요즘 현상인가요? 아니면 좀 뭐 이론적으로 정리가 됐나요? 그냥 현상으로 나온 건가요?
네, 약간 Black travel movement는 그냥 현상으로 그냥
최근에?
네네네네.
미국에서만 나오는 단어네요, 그러면?
네. So the word is specifically, not specifically, but mostly in the context of the US.
Okay. Wow. Yes.
Yes, sure. So the Black travel movement, as Dr. Koo mentioned, it's more of a phenomenon. It hasn't been defined as a theory, but it's something that's happening, right? Like the trend of glamping in Korea, right? That's what we call by a Black travel movement, BTM, similar to Black Lives Matter. It's Black individuals trying to gain power through voicing their activities and their experiences. So we wanted to see the extended time period, because we wanted to see if the trend had changed over time. And that's the best part of social media. You can collect data retroactively, right? You can go back in time. So that's what we did with Twitter. We collected data between 2009 and 2020. We collected to 2021 as well, but it was till May of 2021, and we didn't want to have this 5 months of 1 year, so we removed that. But we had about 70,000 tweets posted by 13,000 unique users. And using M3 multimodal deep neural architecture, it's just a fancy word for like deep learning, right? We divided individuals and organizations because we wanted to see these Black travelers specifically. These organizations who are using the hashtag Black travel movement to promote their products, their activities are great, but we also wanted to focus on the individuals. So we were able to differentiate them, and there were about 44,000 tweets by individuals and 26,000 tweets by organizations. And to collect that, we use hashtags. We started with about 3 to 4 hashtags. And then as we collected data, we saw multiple hashtags appearing together. So when they were using like hashtag melanin travel, they would also use like hashtag black travel. So we will include that in our data collection. And this continued until there was like a saturation of data collection. So after 18 hashtags, even if we added more hashtags, the data wouldn't increase as much as we expected. So we stopped at 18. So you can see an example on the right here, like camping is the best way to travel on a budget. And then this person would use hashtags like Black Travel Movement, Black Travel Feed. So these are the hashtags that we used. So we conducted 2 types of analysis. First was exploratory and second was anchor topic modeling. Let's start with the exploratory analysis. We did 3 types of exploratory analysis. First was bigram frequency. Bigram just means 2 consecutive word frequency. So we are trying to see, okay, who are these people? Because we collected data using hashtags and we weren't sure if these were really Black travelers, right? I mean, I could be an Asian person traveling and using hashtag Black Travel Movement. So we wanted to understand, are we capturing the right person, right? Another limitation of social media, you cannot tell if that person is a real person, right? So we looked at their profile information. So we collected their profile description and looked at the bigrams that were occurring the most frequently. And I'm Asian, right? I'm Korean. I don't know what words Black individuals use. Luckily, my co-authors were both Black. So they were able to tell me these words actually show that these are Black people. It's like, how can you know that these are Black people? Apparently there are words that Black individuals specifically use, something like natural hair. Natural hair, you will also see God-fearing at the end. On the right-hand corner, God-fearing is a very Black background word I didn't know. So all these words, and Spelman is a historically Black university. So we were able to assume that, okay, so even though we use hashtags, we have captured actually Black individuals who are posting. So this was the first thing we did. And then we located them based on their profile location. Because on social media, you see that people put their locations, right? I live in Korea, I live in the US. Because social media data is dirty, you will see a lot of people putting locations that are really weird, like I live on Mars, I live on, I'm the citizen of the world, or I live in the Antarctica, as you can see from a little dot right there. But what we did was we collected all these text-based locations, and then we turned it into longitudinal and latitudinal data using Google API. And be careful when you're using Google API. I'm not sure if anyone else has experienced this. I didn't know that they charge you when you go above threshold. So I had to see this random charge from Google appear on my bank account, and I thought I was hacked. Anyways, that's a little side note. So we were able to see that even though we thought we were only looking at the US population, these Black travelers were everywhere. So a lot of people who are even living outside the US identify as Black and were using the hashtags that we were searching for. And last was a temporal pattern. We wanted to see, we knew that it started with organizations, the movement itself with the hashtags, but did it stay the same? And so we looked at, how many tweets were posted by individuals versus organizations and how it evolved. So you can see that it started to get serious around 2012, 2013. And originally by organizations, but then the movement the individuals took over the movement. They were much more vocal. They were posting much more tweets than the organizations. So we see that the movement started with organizations, but the individuals were, taking charge afterwards. So this was just to understand how the movement had developed over the years. The next step we did, because we wanted to understand what they were talking about, right? And one thing you can do with a large text data is conduct topic modeling. So topic modeling is a simple way of, how would you say, like summarizing and identifying common topics that are occurring in the text. The algorithm will automatically find words that co-occur together, and they will try to, cluster them according to the topic. But one limitation of general topic modeling is that you are not able to use theoretical approach. But anchored correlation explanation topic modeling lets you do that. It's a very similar way of doing qualitative research. If you're a qualitative researcher, you know that we create the code book first, right? Based on the theories and previous literature. And then we use that code book to analyze interviews and text. It's the same way with the anchored topic modeling. So we use the theory of flourishing, how people are pursuing, well-being. And we also manually reviewed 900 randomly selected tweets. And also we conducted a general topic modeling to see what topics were emerging based on the text. So with that result, we were able to find 8 groups of themes. So 8 themes came up: belongingness, escape, experiential, heritage, information sharing, outdoors, safety, and wellness. So it's like the same as the qualitative research, right? We have 8 themes, and based on the 8 themes, we were able to create this list of words that would fall into each theme. So for belongingness, we would have like 25 words that would be related to that, like family, friends, all those. And then for heritage, we would have, African American, we will have African continent. All those would be included in these groups. And using that, we were able to conduct a topic modeling and found out that, they all fell under the model of well-being, but we also saw that there were a lot of them are overlapping between the contexts, right? Heritage would fall under transcendent context as well as collective context. Interpersonal, you would see safety, belongingness, and information sharing all falling under that. So what did this paper tell us? What did the findings tell us? So what are the key takeaways from this paper, right? So we found out that Black Travel movement had moved beyond simply warning others about the racism and safety, and then it has moved on to pursuing well-being, right?
One question.
Yes.
Can I see the previous slide? Okay, this slide. You're collecting data by crawling from Twitter, and you look at it, review manually, randomly selection 900 by yourself and by your team, right? And how can you be able to justify the labeling well-being for the overlapping keywords from the each dimension of the part, 5 parts? So is actually somebody say, how can you justify and define that the overlapping as a well-being the concept? Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yes, that's a very good point. So you're asking, how can we justify the heritage falls between transcendent and collective, right? That we argued. That was based on the context. Again, with similar to social data analytics, the idea of not well-being, but more of a flourishing is still developing, right? The theory, the framework. So we took this framework, but then when we found the topic of heritage, we weren't able to say if it fell into one of these dimensions, right? Or safety. We know that it's about interpersonal contacts, but it's specifically for Black individuals, safety also relates to collective contacts because of their history and their background. And for like wellness and safety, it is related to physical contacts, but at the same time, safety and wellness would be psychological as well, right? So that was more of as telling a story, right? We had to justify in our results and conclusion section, yes.
Another question is, you specifically, your research about Black community and Black individuals is quite interesting to other people who are living in other countries. But anyway, people probably this phenomenon in United States, probably white people, the main white people, they look at this diagram as the standardization, but Black people probably particularly and looked at slightly different keyword and concept. Is that true?
Yes, we believe so, because existing theories in any field were based on the majority, right? So a lot of leisure research especially were based on white population, white male population. So by looking at different racial and ethnic groups, we are able to actually improve or advance or even modify the theories and frameworks that are existing. Like Koreans, we travel differently from Americans, right? That's one thing I noticed when I came to our PTM at Penn State. A lot of people like camping. And camping doesn't mean glamping in the US, right? Camping means you actually going into this wild west with no one around you, where there could be a bear, and they enjoy that, right? For me, it's like a big no. I don't want to be eaten by a bear, right? So this is why we need to look at different demographics, right? Yes. And I see another question. So you mean in topic modeling, that's what different researchers subjective. So in topic modeling, the general topic modeling, the words are not sorted by researchers. It's by the algorithm, and it determines the clusters based on how often they occur together. So if they see a lot of times, like, I don't know, Obama and politics happening together, it will try to cluster that together. But the issue with that is that's because, like a qualitative approach, we sometimes want to take a theoretical approach to data, right? We want to see if that theory applies to the data set. And that's where the anchored correlation explanation topic modeling can do. So that includes researchers' subjectivity, yes. I hope that answered the questions. Okay, so feel free to stop me anytime again. So actually
Professor,
yes.
sorry, I have a quick question about the topic modeling. So if sometimes when there's multiple words, it might be meaning something different. Something like maybe escape from the dangerous situation means can have both meanings for each categories. So this algorithm can filter those kind of problems, or it also should be defined by the researchers. That was a question.
Depends on the context. So if the word had different meanings, that means that word will be used in different contexts, right? So the algorithm should be able to capture that. But you will also see that the algorithm is never perfect. It will capture random topics. So always, as I said in the beginning, social data analytics is a very qualitative and quantitative approach. You have to review the data and see why this topic emerged from the text, right? And you go back, you analyze, you clean the data again. You may have to remove random data sets. So for my dissertation, I used data from Twitter again, but on the topic of orphanage tourism. And I used the keyword orphan, and that captured a lot of Star Wars data. I didn't watch Star Wars, which is very, shameful, but apparently the main character is an orphan. and they use the word, orphan a lot in that movie. So I got a lot of those data, and that you cannot just remove automatically, right? You have to go back to the data set. So similar thing may happen if you're doing topic modeling. Any other questions? No? Yeah, so actually that touched on my third takeaway. So theories and frameworks need to be continuously updated and modified because existing ones are often based on demographics exclusive of the global majority. And like any study, there were limitations. We only looked at English. This is always a limitation of me conducting research. But actually, thanks to machine learning, we are able to nowadays automatically translate, right, the text. So with my recent research, we are actually collecting more than English and trying to see if we can translate that so that we are able to analyze multiple languages. And we focus specifically in the US-based context when we are trying to rationalize the study. And last was limited investigation of intersectionality of identities. We only looked at Black individuals as a whole, but Black men, Black women, Black children, they may have different motivations and experiences, but we weren't able to see that yet. So hopefully there'll be future studies that can address those issues. So that was the first study. Any questions? Any questions about anything about the paper?
Hello, Professor. I have a quick question about the Black travelers itself, like the definition. So when we think about the Black people, we just think about the real Black skin people. But actually in America and in worldwide, Black is complicated. Some people just the skin is just Black, but some people have the Black identity and they have mixed, how can I say, I don't want to be a racist, but some people have different racism from their parents or grandparents, and they don't think themselves as a Black people. So did you how do you think about this problem in your study?
Definitely, that's a big issue, right? That I experienced it when I came to the US. I was talking to a friend who came from Chile, and she was like, I don't understand why I'm a Latina. I'm a white in Chile. It's like, why is everyone in the US calling me a Latina?
Yeah.
So that's an identity issue, right? So actually, thanks to the hashtags, we argue that we collected people who are self-identifying as Black. They themselves use the hashtag Black Travel Movement. We did not look at their profile pictures. Computer science people have been doing this, right?
Yeah.
Analyze profile pictures to see if that's a Black person, Asian person,
Yes.
white, female, male, but that can be controversial in social science research.
Yeah.
Right? So that's what we did. Because we use hashtags, we're able to argue that they were self-identifying as Black. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I have a question, Professor.
Yes.
Just to begin with, it is actually quite shocking for me to handle these kind of topics to be researched, because it's a very sensitive keyword. So that was my first impression of this study. But at the same time, I would like to ask you, what was the core takeaways, or what was the core target that you were heading to in order from doing this research? Where were you heading to?
So the topic, yes, was sensitive. And for me being Asian, talking about Black travelers was really tricky. But thanks to my co-authors, it was okay. But we actually received a very interesting reviews from the journals. They talked about, why are you mentioning systemic racism? It doesn't matter. All those are side discussions. But the reason we started with this was when we were studying the tourism theories and leisure theories, we didn't agree with them completely. from being a minority group in the US, right? And we saw that all the papers were from this white male researchers. So we thought, you know what, actually we need more gays from these minority groups. And I saw that a lot of my Black friends were traveling in large groups. We say we group travel too, right? But when we say we travel with friends, we travel with like 3 people. But I saw that my friend was traveling with like 30 people in a group. It's not like a tour. It's the friends group. That's 30 people traveling together. I'm like, that's such an interesting phenomenon. It's like, it's so different. And why aren't people capturing this? So I asked my friends and they're like, yeah, we travel differently because we have different background, a different history. We were afraid to be killed when we were traveling in the back. It's like, I didn't know, right? So that was one of the reasons why we really wanted to look at this. And we saw that a lot of people were conducting qualitative research, but we want to see the history. We wanted to see the history and change and the trends of Black travel movement.
Professor,
Yes.
I have a question.
Yes.
Thank you for introducing this interesting topic to us. Can I ask why you choose this channel, Twitter? Because there are so many social media channels like Instagram or Facebook. And when I search this topic on Instagram, it looks like just a flexing, not just warning about these dangerous places like that. There's so many images about the flexing from the Black people. So I just wondering why you choose this Twitter channel. And in comparing with other channels, I think this concept a little bit different, I think. So could you please tell me?
Yes, so different social media have different purposes, right? One thing that a lot of people study Twitter is because of access of data, so ease of data, right? Twitter allows the most access to data. It offers API, it offers scraping. Facebook, you can collect data, but only for the groups. So, the Facebook groups, and you can collect their posts and their replies. So that's the only thing you can collect. Instagram, again, can be tricky, but the problem is a lot of Instagram accounts are private, especially for those individuals. So Twitter has the largest access to data generally, but at the same time, Twitter has a different meaning to Black population. There is even the word Black Twitter. So Twitter is often used by Black individuals to start a movement. Like we saw with the Black Lives Matter, it all started with Twitter, right? So Black individuals use Twitter to spread their words, their thoughts, their movements. So we thought it was fitting to use Twitter as well. And you may be surprised that TripAdvisor doesn't allow scraping, but a lot of people do scrape, right? You have to be careful with that. Anyways.
Professor, I have another question too. So can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. As the perspective methodology, I know that when you're using topic modeling, we have 2 words standardized. So, and the research will decide use noun or verb as following their own subjective decision. So I want to ask your experience in this study. I wonder if you only use nouns for analyzing or include verbs too. And if you use verb too, do you consider the differences between the tenses, like the past and present things?
Can you actually, sorry, you were cutting off a little bit. Could you repeat the question?
Yeah. 한국말로 혹시 해도 된다면은 자, 토픽 모델링을 공부를 하면서 이제 한국에서는 막 단어에서 명사를 사용하는지 아니면 동사를 사용하는지가 좀 중요한 포인트로 여겨지는데 이제 혹시 이 연구에서는 단어를 사용을 하실 때 명사만 사용하신 건지 아니면은 동사를 사용을 하셨다면 혹시 시대에 대해서는 어떻게 분석하셨는지가 좀 궁금합니다.
So the verb form and the noun format. We didn't run into any issues with that, but let me, I actually have a list of tables here that we use. I could check. So we use both verbs and nouns. We made sure that the tense was consistent. So we changed the tense first. We made sure that the, you know, the S's are gone, like groups, those were gone. And we made it into all lower text so that we had the consistency. But I don't think we ran into any issues with the tense. That could be an issue with Korean. I can see that it could be an issue. But for this study, no, we didn't have any issues with the anchor words.
Professor, I had a question.
Yes.
Yes. I think it's really interesting to what you explain about like big data research, and because I'm not really good at like IT, because we know that collecting the data on a social media, for example, is going to be very not very easy anyway, right? So, and cleaning the data is also even more complicated. But I'm not really good at IT anyway. I used to think about like doing certain kind of research like this, but I'm concerned about, I mean, the reliability of the data that I collected from social media. So do you have any kinds of advice or suggestion for us to how to ensure the reliability of the data?
Reliability can be a big issue with social media data because we cannot do random sampling, right? Unlike survey, we are able to randomly sample people, but for social media, that's not possible. And we are not able to tell the specific demographic. So that's why we try to use a bit larger size data for big data analysis. Another thing I want to mention is that not everyone has to be good at social media analytics. Then I will have no place to publish, right? Also, because we can collaborate, right? We each have our strengths, and both my co-authors have no idea how I collected or analyzed data, but they're very good with qualitative approach. So they will put they'll have their input in critical race theory. They'll analyze this qualitatively, which I hate to do. I tried with interviews. Interview analysis is the hardest thing that you can do. And interviewing people, writing that down, transcribing, it's like, I can't do that. But some people are very adept in that too, right? So you collaborate with others. I think that's the best way. I still get emails from my friends saying, hey, can you collect this data for me? So, okay. You know, it's but then they will, you know, help me with other things. I don't know how to do spatial analysis. I'll reach out to people. Can you help me with this? I have data. So yeah, there are always ways to incorporate this type of data into your research, but you know, we collaborate.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay. I will move on to our second study. So for the second study, I am actually going to be very brief about the studies, but introduce a database, which I think is very useful. So this is called Recreation Information Database, RICB. And we use this data to publish 2 studies. I'm not an expert in national parks or camping. It's my collaborator, Will Rice, who is an expert in camping and national park study. So I was more of an analysis person, but this is such a resourceful database. So I wanted to introduce you to this. So this is like the secondary data type, right? We looked at social media data. Now we're looking at longitudinal secondary data. And it's a single point of access to information about recreational opportunities in the US specifically, national parks, state parks, all those. And it has historical reservations data between 2006 and 2021. And it has daily and individual transactions about what people did, what campsites they went to, what permits they bought, what facilities they use, what events and tours they did. So it's a large set of data, right? You can get this through API if you're familiar with API, or you can also just download this in CSV that you can open in Excel, right? But it's a big data, so you have to make sure that your computer is able to open, and you know your program is able to open that size data. So we thought we would use this to first try forecasting the campground demand. So national park camping is a big thing in the US. People will book 6 months in advance to go to the specific campground. And it's very expensive to travel there, right? Campground booking is not expensive because US has this idea that this area, this land belongs to everyone in the US. So they don't do dynamic pricing of the campgrounds like some parks in Canada do. It's very cheap, which is again why you have to book really fast, right? So it has a different pattern of booking compared to hotels or other tourist attractions. First, because of this fixed pricing and early demand, but also because they close. Some parks close earlier than the others because it gets colder and it's very dangerous for people to camp there. And some parks never close. So we wanted to see, can we apply the existing forecasting methods to campground demand as well? Because it can help with the National Park Service or the admins, right? Help with resource allocation, manage the parks efficiently, and effectively communicate the status of the park to the potential customers. So we got the data from 2007 to 2017, and we had about 346,000 data points from 108 campgrounds. So with that, we analyzed the traits of the campgrounds. But for forecasting, we only selected 5 because you cannot present all 108 campground forecasting in one paper, right? It didn't make any sense to us. So we selected ones that had the cleanest data with a lot of data, and those that had different characteristics but were also popular. So we had Big Meadows in Shenandoah, Elkmont in Great Smoky Mountains, Mather in Grand Canyon, and Moraine in Rocky Mountain, and Upper Pines in Yosemite. So all the popular national parks. I have not been to any one of them, which is, I'm very ashamed to say. I should really visit these national parks. And then we applied a number of forecasting analytics like moving average, exponential smoothing, SARIMA neural network, and K-nearest neighbors, KNN, and a combination of best working methods. And we are able to forecast the demand to about 80% accuracy. So we share this information with the National Park Service, and hopefully it helped them with their admin. So this was the first study that we used with RICB. And the second study that we did was trying to understand what led the demand for these campers, right? What kind of facilities or ecological aspects attracted the recreationalist to certain campsites. So we focused on the Watchman Campground. And for this, we only looked at 1 year. So 2019 reservation data for Watchman Campground in Zion National Park. And we wanted to see how different factors were affecting average booking window. So how fast people were booking. So we looked at like distance to nearest dump station, nearest restroom, walk-in camp. Is it a walk-in campsite or not? How about the price meant having access to electricity? And also we looked at like neighboring campsites, campsite shading, access to this river, Virgin River, and view of the canyon walls, all those. And my collaborator, Will Rice, conducted a spatial econometric model, and he was able to identify that having electricity, as well as having direct access to the river and the views of the canyon walls mattered, and people booking the campsites early, right? So this methodology could be applied to multiple campsites and trying to tell the campers as well as admins that these are the popular ones. You want to book them fast. And if it is possible, do some dynamic pricing so that you can actually control the demand, right? So for these, the purpose for me was to show you the data set, what type of information is out there. Perhaps some of you are interested in national parks and campgrounds. And this is be a good place to start for you. Any questions? Not sure if Korea also has this type of data available. Camping, maybe National Forestry Department. No.
Professor, if I may ask, can we go to the Wiki data, please? Oh yeah, I just wonder if it was kind of project from government or organization in US, or
You're muted.
did you just do it as a research? Was it kind of a government project?
So this is for the government. This is by the government, and they record their historical reservations. Also, people are able to search for any activities and any campsites on this website. So it's like a website for the campers and for the government. So this, I think, data set became available to researchers like 2018, I want to say. So we still don't see a lot of papers that are using this database. That's a good data source, right? We see a lot of people nowadays doing research like, where are these campers coming from? Because there is a zip code for these individual transactions. So you're able to map the zip codes. You can also overlay the data with census to see, what type of demographics are coming to the campsites. Yeah.
Dr. Park, so
Yes.
I was curious, what kind of spatial econometric method did you apply? So spatial error model or spatial lag model or other things? I'm just curious, what kind of method?
I actually have
Spatial
no idea.
yeah.
I actually have no idea because it was Will who did the spatial analysis. As you may be aware, I'm not a spatial analysis person. I just looked at the results of what he did. I don't think it was a lag because it's just from 1 year data. So,
I see.
but I'm not sure.
Yeah.
He's smart.
Yes, Will is very smart. Will is a very great researcher. I highly encourage, if you're interested in national parks, forestry.
Anyway,
research,
you get this data from that well, the government, US government will open this data for their citizens for free. Wow.
Data is publicly available for
Publicly
anyone.
available. Okay. Yeah, good. So it's data society. Okay.
Professor, can I ask you something? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
This could be really lame question, but I just wondering what makes you study about like campers or camping sites? Because apparently, as you mentioned, you're not a camper and you're not a camping person. So I just wondering what makes you study about this topic. What was your motivation?
Yeah.
Data.
The motivation was Penn State, because Penn State is a very park and forest department. So you see a lot of people studying campers, and they study about crowdedness. And I didn't understand what they meant by crowding. It's like, so when we go hiking, we expect, as Koreans, someone to be in front of us and behind us, right? That's like a normal thing for us. But apparently for the Americans, that makes you feel very crowded. So these were all very new to me, being near these park people. We always call them park people. We try to differentiate ourselves from park people, but so that's what actually brought this idea. And I was a data person for these projects, right? I will help them get this large data, clean the data for them, make it analyzable, and give it to them, right? So yeah, that's why.
Good.
Professor, oh, sorry. Professor, I have a question. Recently, in domestic in Korea, the camping is one of the hot trends. Before COVID-19, actually, Korean people love the camping, but after COVID-19, all Korean regional tourism organization, including the Korea Tourism Organization, introduce or promote the safe destination using those kind of camping sites. So I just wondering, this research is focusing on 2019 data only, or you can just tell us about the difference between the COVID-19 period and the before COVID-19?
Yes, so sadly, the data is available till 2020 as of now. So we didn't have access to 2020 data in 2020. So we looked at up until 2019, but for the US, it was the same. There was this huge surge of demand for national parks. You saw much more people going to national parks and going camping because, you know, we couldn't go anywhere else, right? So yeah, I think that trend was similar in the US, going outdoors, you know, going camping because of the COVID pandemic.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Anyway, the Professor Jin-won Kim and then Soyoung Park and Bing Pan, they are very good at doing this kind of research and then illustrating the theme park and the location based research well.
Data analysis, you have to go to Dr. Kim. I'm not the person to talk to, right? He's the expert. He's the guru of spatial GIS. So if you have any questions about spatial analysis, I suggest that you talk to Dr. Kim about that. Yes.
Okay, cool.
Okay, so last study is a slightly old study. It was my first publication, I believe. And we were trying to identify the next nonstop flying market for the city of Charleston. So Charleston is actually where Dr. Bing Pan was previously located before he moved to Penn State. And we wanted to see where should be the next nonstop flight. Again, this was motivated partly because I was in State College. If anyone's been to State College, it's a very, very small town out of nowhere. And we had a very limited direct flight to leave the city. And it was just so sad. And I was wondering, why aren't they opening more nonstop flights, right? And they could have more visitors, or we could go out and visit somewhere. But the question is, where to, right? Where should we open the next nonstop flight to? So we tried to combine two theories. First was the gravity model. So this came from my economics background. I was studying international trade at the time. So in international trade, you use the gravity model to understand how much, you know, the economic transactions are happening between countries. This originally comes from the physics and all those, right? So in the gravity model, more population, higher income, shorter distance, shorter flight time, and lower relative cost means that there will be, you know, more transactions between the two cities. But
Dr. Park, can you explain a little bit more what gravity model, gravity theory describe?
The gravity model originally comes from physics. So physics, between the masses, there is a gravity, right? And the bigger the masses, bigger the gravity. Same with the countries. So in international trade, they believe if the country's economic size is bigger, and then there is more likely that there will be more trade between the countries, right? Okay. Same with our tourism. Bigger the countries, more population, greater economic power, more people are going to travel between the countries. So it's the idea is same, but we're looking at like population, income, distance, and so on. Yes.
It's very natural, isn't it? Because of a population over there. So, you know, population transaction between two cities. Absolutely, there must be gravity, and then there must be, you know, the come and go, the density over there.
Yes.
My interesting is, you know, we project that the gravity model can be able to apply for the two big cities like Los Angeles and Seoul. But my interest is even if the small town over there, but people come and go, you know, frequently and bigger than the average size of town. That means it's object effect of gravity models. At this moment, like, you know, for example, in Seoul, where people frequently visit a very famous and nice restaurant located in the big, you know, town and then road. But these days we are, because of we have the smartphone, and we are look at it, and the people who are look at that data and review, and then we are trying to find out some specific very corner of the town, and we reach there, and then standing there and lying there, and then try to enjoy that our specific, you know, meal and enjoyment, even though the small town and small restaurant. So that is possible case in these days because of you know, the smart tourism. So I know that your paper is you know, published in a very good journal, and we're using of the gravity model. But you know, my idea is if we apply for the opposite way, like because of the new, you know, era and technology. What do you think?
I completely agree. Yes, I completely agree. So if we only look at gravity model, it can be limiting because, you know, we have internet now. We don't just go to big cities, right? As Dr. Koo mentioned. So that's where the buying funnel theory comes up. And we looked at web traffic from people. So we looked at web traffic between cities. If people from New York was looking up LA, or are people from State College looking up Pittsburgh. So web traffic was a proxy for us in measuring the interest in a region, because just traditional gravity model is not going to tell you if people are interested in going that area, right? So yes, so that was, it would have been really nice if we actually had the a social media data, but at this time we only use the web traffic from the regions. Yes, so yes.
Sorry for bothering you, but I think it's very interesting because this is, I think, this process, awareness and research and decision. But the research process tab, I think so you just check the web traffic at the destination CVB website occurs, right? But most of the tourists, I think, don't check the website of CVB. Usually just, yes, the visit, the OTAs like a booking.com or Expedia like that. So
Exactly.
yeah, could you please explain more about why the research is focusing on the destination CVB?
Very good points, very good points, very sharp points from everyone. Oh my goodness. So the reason that we included only CVB website was because if you want to collect web traffic, you have to have an agreement. You have to have the website owner help us collect the data. And it can be very tricky, right? And we cannot collect the data from Priceline. We could buy, it's a lot of money, right? And so we were actually able to convince Charleston CVB to share the web traffic data with us. So that was why the web traffic from only CVB was included. So it was because of the limitation of access. Yes. And we agree, not many people know they don't even know what CVB is. I didn't even know what CVB was, right? Before we started studying tourism. So I asked my undergraduate students, do you know what CVB is? They're like, what are you talking about? You know, what's a DMO? It's like, so yeah, but surprisingly, when you search a city and what to do, oftentimes CVB website will pop up on number 1 or 2. So people sometimes visit the website unknowingly that it's a CVB website too in the US. So we kind of hope to justify that through this way. Again,
so can I add something? I mean, I'm not trying to ask the question to you, but I'm trying to kind of help your answer to the student as well, because I actually wrote my dissertation using the CVB data as well. Like I collected all the clickstream data to predict something, the future behavior. Surprisingly, like Dr. Bing Pan or other scholars actually already proved several, the predictive, the predictive power of the website or CVB data as well. Especially, we have to understand like a little bit differences in the perception of CVB between Korea and USA as well. And like, I was actually very surprised as well. When I was in US, I did a lot of the advertisement study as well for the marketing company. And surprisingly, a lot of people in the US actually get the data or information from the official website. So I agree, it's very limited information, but to predict something or to predict future behavior of a particular performance, actually it is very powerful data set as well. Of course, if we combine the other data as well, like for example, like Priceline or TripAdvisor, by combining means here, if we collect all the data all together and predict or analyze something all together, that would be super great for future research, but we are limited capacity or capability. So by using only one,
there, right, for future research.
Yes, I agree. So that's actually quite like important or already studied area in the United States or in Europe as well. So limited but promising or a very powerful data set. That's my little summary for the website information.
Thank you so much. So CVB could be justified, and my mentor coming to rescue me so with the web traffic. So yes, and we thought that direct flight, not having a direct flight, could be a barrier to having access to the market when people are traveling, right? So we first ran a simple regression that looked at number of visitors using direct flight, population, income, relative cost to travel, the distance, and flight time. Flight time was only for the flight passengers. And for the number of visitors, we looked at 3 types of visitors: flight passengers, and here is where we use the device data, right? Mobile devices. So we use the number of mobile devices to estimate the number of tourists and the hotel guests. So 3 types of visitors. So we ran the regression 3 times. And we tried to identify outliers in the regression. So based on this, we always, when we run a regression, we get this, predicted line. But we see some that were overachieving their, more than expected number of visitors. But we also see underachievers who are, even though they have a large population, great income, it's closer to travel to, but people are not traveling as much. And then we compared these outliers with the web traffic. So we consider web traffic as the interest in the region. So it's like a potential to travel. They have a potential to travel, but they're not traveling as much, even though they're interested in the region. So this was how we identify the outliers. And we did this for 3 types of visitors, flight passengers, mobile devices, and hotel guests. So this is what it looked like. And we were able to identify top 5 markets that were really interested in coming, but they were not coming as much, right? So we found that Portland in Maine was very interested, but were not coming. And it's right here on the top, Portland. It's like it's a different Portland from the West Coast, right, on the north. And we found out that they actually have a military site that is highly working together with military sites in Charleston. So a lot of military personnel are traveling between Portland and Charleston. However, there was no direct flight. So we were thinking, okay, if there was a direct flight, there will be a lot of people traveling between Portland and Charleston, even though we couldn't specifically say that they were travelers, right? They are working because of the military issues. But we found some markets that were potentially, profitable for Charleston. But there were a lot of limitations, not just the limitations that we already discussed, but we didn't look at this from an airline's perspective, right? even if we can see that they're going to bring in lots of people, but airlines have hub and spoke system, right? It has to be profitable. If it is not creating profit, doesn't make sense for the airlines to open a nonstop flight. So hopefully for the future studies, we are able to overlay that hub and spoke system, the actual existing airline network, to predict the next nonstop flights. Any questions about the last study?
Professor, may I ask about the equation? Can we go back to the equation part? Yes, on the next slide. I'm also writing my research paper with the gravity model, so I was really like the idea in this paper, but I was concerned about the correlation between the variables because they're very related, the economic power and the population. So did you take the law or did you do any other method to deal with this problem?
We checked for multicollinearity and the correlation between variables using VIF analysis. So you can check the correlation between variables using VIF. I think that's the one I use with using R. And the flight time and distance was highly correlated, but I remember it's been 3 years. I'm trying to remember. I think for the flight passengers, we only included flight time and not the distance. I'll have to check the paper. Yes. Did I answer your question? Yes.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, go.
Okay, I think we're reaching almost 9:30, not 30 here, but 11:30 there. So I'm going to just introduce my current research project and call it a day. So whenever I talk about my research interests nowadays, I say I try to use social data analytics to understand social issues in tourism and hospitality, especially those involving children and people of color. So I've been looking at orphanage tourism using social media data. So orphanage tourism is when people travel to volunteer at orphanages. This was actually my dissertation topic. Sadly, not yet published until, even though I graduated 2 years ago. Hopefully it will be published soon, fingers crossed. So I found out that orphanage tourism is a big issue and tried to look for a lot of studies, but many of them were field studies, right? Going to Cambodia to interview children and orphanage operators. But I wanted to see, do people know about this? Because I didn't know. I didn't know about orphanage tourism. Even though they say that they've been campaigning and spending so much money on making people aware that this is a bad thing for a decade. So I looked at the data on Twitter to see if people's perceptions have changed over time. We are also looking at human trafficking campaigns, trying to see which one's getting traction. Again, this was related to orphanage tourism because orphanage tourism leads to child trafficking and child trafficking to human trafficking, all those. And lastly, we are doing a study on gentrification with Airbnb data with Dr. Kim, which is a very exciting study that I've been working on. And I am always open to collaborations. So please let me know if you're interested in pursuing any of these topics or any social issues in tourism and hospitality, and we can always talk about that. Okay, so that's it. Thank you.
Wow. Wonderful presentation, and you harvest a very good journal, the output. Wow, MBU. Mike, I'm always afraid, what if I met you at the same time? Probably I couldn't become a professor. These days, my next generation is so smart to compete against.
No, I was just so lucky to find the job. It's not an easy job market out there, guys.
But anyway, these days I want to give my question to Jinon and Soyoung Park about the research methodology. You guys are very good at the secondary data, especially GPS data. But however, in my understanding, is we need to clarify the tourism motivations and why. But however, that GPS data and this kind of secondary data, we just can be able to understand the output of that data set on the map. So these days I'm trying to make connection, experimental marketing, design, and then this kind of a big data analytics together. And so it's quite hard work. But anyway, through your experience so far, when you publish your papers, how about that? Reviewers probably ask that, kind of a research motivation and why questions. So can you share your experience about that so far?
I can go first if Dr. Kim's okay with that. I get, we all get a lot of rejections, right? I have gotten a lot of rejections with the social media data because one thing that we as people who use larger data and data analytics get is, why aren't you using qualitative or other surveys together? Surveys or interview data using people don't get that question, right? Why aren't you using big data with your survey data? But anyways, there is a limitation to social media data, and I think the mixed method approach is the way to go for the future. But that will require, more extensive time investment and, and even more resources. So for my dissertation as well, I had social media data, but I also went to Korea to actually interview orphanage operators and orphanage children. We couldn't because of the IRB and the ethics issues, but volunteers. So that tells you a much deeper understanding into the phenomenon. So what I would suggest is, of course, it is good to have this secondary data that's objective, but at the same time, try to incorporate survey and interviews into your research.
Yeah, also I agree with Dr. Park. So until now, I really focused on geographical secondary data. So even though these data set can provide a huge data set as well as really objective some attribute. So as Dr. Khu say, it is very difficult to consider behavioral or subjective perspective. That's why just one of my approaches is kind of multiple method approach, kind of combining experimental or survey-based method as well as maybe geographical approaches. So one of my publication, maybe recently I published one article to the Journal of Business Research. I combined experimental study and geospatial analytics. So my title is Spatial and Experimental Approach to blah, blah, blah. So that could address maybe reviewers kind of critical comment, just sharing my experience. Yeah.
Thank you. Good.
I also have a question to Dr. Park. Thank you for your wonderful presentation. Like I can sense like kind of warm perspective, like kind of like philanthropic perspective from you, because like honestly, if you do research about majority or the like making money industry, you can get more money from it. But like Black Lives Matter or orphan tourism, that kind of we think kind of like minority research topics, I think. So I wonder what affects you to interest in like such research topics.
So I started at Penn State. I wanted to do tourism economics because I had background in econ. I studied math. It was just what I was, right? then I think it was my second year, we had this class with Dr. John Datillo when he asked us to write a mission statement about our lives and as a researcher. And that's actually when I realized that I didn't have children in my research, even though I was very interested in the well-being of the children. So I started looking into tourism research that involved children, which is very limited. Again, not because lack of interest, but because it's really hard to study children. You have to go through all the ethical boards, right? They wouldn't let you talk to the children very easily. So I started reading and I found out that child trafficking and sexual exploitation of children was a big thing. So I wanted to do that at first. I wanted to access the dark web. And my mentor, Dr. Pan, actually told me that can be very tricky because you can get deported if you're caught accessing dark web. I was like, oh, so maybe that's for, when you get the US citizenship and, get the full professorship and everything so that no one can fire you. Yeah, so I started reading more and more and landed on the topic of orphanage tourism and human trafficking. But one thing I want to warn is that if you focus on the niche topic, you can get rejected from journals because it is niche. I had issues with this multiple times because it cannot be generalizable. It's a very small demographic. They might not like it just because, right? So you have to be careful with that too.
So far, through my experience in Korea, the data itself doesn't matter to do research in this world anymore. So we can be able to collect data by crawling or collecting data from DMO and KTO, whatever. The matter is experience research, how to make and write papers, and is hypothetical, argument and research question, and then all through the writing, skills. So
a story, right? Yes.
So this kind of, seminars, we actually, you can get a contact point with the Professor Jinon Kim and Park Soyoung professor, and then they may help you to do research. Even though you are studying master degree here or your future, I'm sure. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Professor, I have a question. Yeah. When we study using secondary data, we have a limitation getting the right data, the appropriate data as the variable. So I guess we can't consider all variables in using secondary data, but sometimes we sometimes remove the variable, the relatively less important, but some reviewers said, why do not consider the variables? So my question is, how do we depend well? So can you share your experience or the know-how that we can depend these comments over reviewers? Yeah.
You will get a lot of comments from reviewers. I'm sure Dr. Kim can tell many stories about this, but just because the reviewer mentions some comment doesn't mean that you have to address all of them, right? You try your best to address a lot of those comments, but then you also defend back why you didn't include the variables. Well, you could also mention like technicality issues with the correlation, and they should be able to understand. They're giving comments without knowing the context. Not sure, Dr. Kim, do you have any further comments about this?
Yeah, so just sharing my experience. So that is a great question and then very critical question. So yeah, it is very normal situation. Always review why you didn't consider any specific variable. So in this case, maybe just maybe my situation. First of all, I did my best. So if it is possible, I did my best to collect many data, a variety of variable, many data as much as possible. And then also I did several some correlation check, and then whenever the reviewer, why you didn't consider, already we consider that data set, but when we check the correlation, there are many some multi-correlativity issues, so we deleted it. That is one of my approach. And then also one of my kind of some tip is there are some data availability. Yeah, even though we try to consider, we already understand what you say, but right now it is our best effort. So maybe in the future, maybe we will consider. That is also another approach. So anyway, it's always maybe big assignment for me. So just maybe my kind of recommendation is just do your best. And then even though we can correct the perfect data, if you develop really clear justification and rationale to defend your argument, reviewer can be persuaded. So just with confidence, just try to make reviewer understand what you say. That is my best approach, I think. But it's very difficult situation.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Actually, publication is fighting for your reviewer. Reviewer is you. Okay, so my paper goes to the Jinon Kim, and he has a lot of experts and a lot of knowledge, a lot of information about a certain domestic domain, specific domain. So his judgment is very critical and harsh, and there's no such a what?
Yeah, just maybe sharing one more my experience. So right now I am serving as some reviewer for ATR, JTR, and TM. So whenever I have requested maybe please review that paper, so I did my best. Sometimes I know it might be impossible to consider some control variable, but I intentionally kind of please consider these things, and then I will evaluate it. I already know it is impossible, but I will check how maybe they justify, they kind of some provide their rationale. So maybe that could be kind of my evaluation. So even though they can consider some the data set I request, if they provide a really clear argument and justification, I agree. And then, I understand, and then accept. So that's why you don't need to consider everything what reviewer say. Just maybe you need to develop clear justification and then some rationale. And then also maybe explain what kind of effort you have been conducted to consider your request. So that can make reviewer understand your argument and then give the accept decision. So sharing my experience. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's why we need an advisor. Not just advisor, good advisor. Okay, any question? Good.
Okay. Dr. Gu said that the universities collaborate with DMOs or National Tourism Board to gather the meaningful and useful data. To explain my background, I'm now working at the regional tourism organization. So we are struggling to gather meaningful data from OTAs or channels. So are there any examples, good sample for the United States university collaborating with good channels like OTAs or TripAdvisor?
That's a very critical one, actually collecting data or acquire data from another institution. Actually, through my experience so far, KTO, other Seoul tourism organizations, and they don't know very well about data design, data set, data itself. So before they build up database, they ask to the companies who deal with the data well. But even though they don't quite sure their data value anyway, and also they don't allowed to share their data to someone. So that's why the Korea professor in Seoul and Kyung University, the professor actually have a close relationship with those people and can be able to collect data. And also, like a secondary data is a secondary data. It's not the purpose of research itself. So actually, it's hard to fit our research context. It's very hard. So I recommend you to do research first, collecting data based on research design, and survey data is important. Survey-based, research by scientific research method is critical to understand the whole process from the beginning to the end. And then next is a secondary data, and then social data. So it's up to you, your advisor. But however, survey data is also very, very fundamental process for processing the research itself. Don't ignore it. That's my opinion.
Survey lets you design the study and lets you ask the questions that really matter to the organization. For the US, as far as I know, I haven't worked with DMO that looked at OTA data, but I know that I'm working with a Spanish organization that has booking.com data for individual hotels. So that they scraped. But it requires some funding, right? Because you have to store the data, you have to hire someone who can help with the data collection. So, but I'm sure a lot of universities are interested in collaborating with DMOs, right? That's where the resource comes from for us. So.
And the second advisor here in Korea, I guess, the Professor Jinwon, he get the data from Florida government. It's open data, it's available data. But here in Korea, we can collect data from directly DMO, like a Jeju 관광공사, 한국 관광공사 sometimes. But things important is the matter is we don't know very well about the research processing. In that case, we can call to Dr. Jinwon Kim, hey, help me, and then work together.
Yeah,
That's why we need to
always
collaborate.
happy to collaborate with the Smart Tourism Research Center. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Because of the limited budget, the DMOs is always consider which channel is good for us and the good data. So yeah, thank you for your advising.
But anyway, the good thing is another one is a Korean government every single year they are launched a tourism project, whatever project. So they keep working on collecting data, sharing data, and making data and meaningful information, and even developing their information systems, application systems, or social media, whatever. So actively researching is up to your research advisor to collecting data and get the data and working data and collaborate with internationally with like a Soyoung Park and Jinwon Kim or whatever. Okay. That's my idea.
Professor, I have a question about the process of the research. Before that, thank you for the presentation. And I used to study with I used to do the research using SEM, and the process is like I set the model in draft and collect the data with survey, and most cases, most of the hypotheses are supported because most of them are not really new, like satisfaction has an impact on happiness, and of course it's our most of them are supported. But when I did the research with data crawling, when I set the hypothesis and crawl the data and verify it, the result was not really what I expected. It's like because it's not limited to SEM, I try to use new methodologies, and in many cases it was not what I expected, so I had to throw away the data. So I wanted to ask you, in these cases, before you start crawling the data, do you usually set like plan B or C, or when the result is not like what you expected, do you just throw them away?
That's a difficult one with the social media data, right? I can't count how many times I had to throw out the data because it didn't make any sense. That happened recently too, when I was looking at human trafficking campaign, and I wanted to collect these campaigns that were done by hotels. And sadly, hotels don't use Twitter as much. So I had 100 tweets for a decade. And you cannot do social media data research with 100 tweets. No one's going to accept it, right? So that will happen. So what you do is start exploring the data first. That's what data-driven research is, what usually is, right? Start exploring what kind of data you're trying to use, see if it's viable, then move on to actually writing up the whole paper. I did the opposite for the human trafficking one. We wrote the whole paper, then we looked at the data and it didn't make any sense. So we had to actually move on from social media data to experimentation rather. So we are now trying to conduct an experiment to see how people react to different messages and different images. And that will happen with social media data. So start with the data first before you put in too much effort into the paper, because it will hurt you. Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, just answering Jeon's question. So also I agree with Dr. Park. Yeah, but just maybe from the geographical perspective, most of the result and outcome is overall average. So that's why, because if you collect maybe 300, maybe some survey participant, yeah, you got the outcome kind of overall average outcome. But I guess each participant might have different, sometimes positive, sometimes negative, sometimes significant, sometimes not significant. That's why as a tourism geographer, just think about the geographical approach. So geographical approach can provide overall kind of understanding, overall correlation between dependent variable and independent variable, as well as exploring the local dynamics and local variations in the relationship among variables. So even though the overall outcome is what you expect, but if you visualize special pattern, some area might be the outcome what I expected, but some area is not outcome what I expected. So you can explain some local patterns, so you can provide some, you can interpret such as some complicated phenomena. So that's why I strongly recommend think about the geography and then how to apply geographical approach. So that could be one of the alternative approach, I believe. Yeah, thank you.
That's a very interesting point. You know, survey-based research is you can train yourself from the, you know, theoretical background and then try to, you know, develop hypotheses and then prove by, you know, 200 participants and 300 participants. Usually is acceptable, you know, hypothesis. However, you know, it's a secondary data or like a, you know, field data. It's different data set actually. So the result might be different. But anyway, you have to argue the difference reasonably. Okay, reasonably. That's the matter of the survival of the research or not. Okay, next.
Hello, Professor. My name is Yerim Kim, and I really like your lecture, every part of it, because I also have a background from economics, and I worked as a convention area I worked with CBB and DMO, so I ended up HNT area. So I think I have a tons of questions to you, but let me ask, why did you choose HNT area to study after your economic background?
Yeah,
By chance?
so very different. It's not a very different field, but it's a different approach. So when I was at Korea University, I got an internship at UNWTO. So I got to work there for 6 months. And what I realized was that tourism has so much potential. I saw like Ha Long Bay, you give each household a boat and there's boom, an industry. It's just so much things happening in the industry. And I think that's why I wanted to switch the major. I wanted to study more real life because econ, we do assumptions. We assume that there's only 2 countries in the world. We create these theories, and it's very different. When I was at Penn State for my first year, my advisor asked me to create this theoretical framework for this paper, and I created this pages of econometric model and gave it to him. He's like, "What is this? What are you trying to do?" I was like, "You told me to create a theoretical framework." So I didn't sleep for a few nights to create these equations. And he's like, no, psychological framework. What's the social theory behind this? Why are people acting like this, right? So I think that's what drew me to tourism and hospitality. It's very human oriented and very dynamic and very down to earth.
And then did you have to study more and focus more about social theory because you were not accustomed to it before?
Yes, everything was very new to me. So actually all the classes were so exciting for me because everything was so new. Other PhD students were like, we already know about this theory. Everything was new to me. It's like leisure theories. They were reading Aristotle. It's just very fun, very new. And I think it also helped me get a new perspective on things because I came from different backgrounds. I was taking, leisure theories, and I was going to communications to take other classes. So it actually became my strong suit that I didn't know about the tourism theories. It can be tricky when you're teaching though. When you're teaching tourism and hospitality students, when you don't have any background in tourism and hospitality, you have to fake it, right? You have to fake it till you make it, so.
Thank you for the answer.
You're welcome.
Okay, we have 10 minutes left. I guess you still a lot of questions about research, about doctoral life or assistant professor, whatever. You can ask it.
Yeah, whichever question. It doesn't have to be about research, as Dr. Koo said. If you're interested about the life in the US, being a assistant professor, I think we can also answer those questions. Yeah.
Professor, thank you for your good presentation. I have a one question. I wonder the process, the coming up with research ideas, such as even if I have a research idea, it is difficult to conduct research because it is hard to collect stable data, big data that can make the idea come true, such as there is no data which fits my idea. So in general, do you came up the research idea from the phenomenon and after that correct as appropriate data as possible to realize your research idea? Or do you look in the big data? Can you use your research and refine your research idea according to the data?
For me personally, I start with ideas and then I start looking for data. Is there data that can help me understand this issue? Like the orphanage tourism, like the human trafficking and the gentrification study I'm doing with Dr. Kim. We start with the idea. I will consult with other people who have done similar studies. Then I will ask, do you know if I have access to these types of data? And they can help you understand that. And no, not everyone has to be an expert in everything, right? You can always collaborate with others who are using social media data or who's doing spatial data like Dr. Kim and work from there. So I think it's easiest when you start with the idea, for me at least. But sometimes you start with data like Rigby. Rigby, it started with data. We didn't know what to do with it. We just knew that there was this data. So we started looking at the data and found an idea.
Thank you so
And
much.
one additional comment about this, you know what? I become a professor about 15 years ago, but still every single week doing this kind of research activity, and got an idea from the Dr. Soyoung Park and Jinwon Kim. You know, we are limited humans, so we cannot, you know, fully understand the situation and the phenomenon. So that's why we every single week, every single day to get together and work together and sharing idea and whatever. So, you know, advisor, you can have advisor actually help you to start your work in the at this minimum. But you know, this kind of research, you know, colloquium is a lot help to, you know, meet your people and the collaborator and the idea, whatever. Actually, PhD is not the, you know, learning from someone, but actually learning from the collaborator.
Yeah, make friends. I think that was the best way for me. I tried to write at least one paper with one of the students in the department. So I ended up writing papers with every single cohort of my class when I went to our PTM. So just talk to your friends, see what they're doing, to see what overlaps with you too. And that also helps you, you know, working with different kinds of people too. So,
but you know, funny thing is, smart people want the smart top people, and smart top people want the smartest people. So you should become a smart. If you don't know the how to do research, the collaborator doesn't want you. There's a harsh situation, and that's the fact of in this world. Every single word, you know, if to someone good at data crawling, yeah, I have interest in. Like Jinwon Kim, he's a junior faculty to me, and he published every single year, and 5 or 10 and TM and ATR, JTR, highly interested person. You know, is a competitive society. Knife is knife is you cannot survive with knife. Is it true?
Yes, I think so. Just maybe sharing one of my experiences. Yeah, always maybe creating the smart idea is one of the difficult maybe challenges. So in my case, even though I'm tourism scholar, but I intentionally try to attend the geographic conference and recreation conference and even business conference, and then just watching what other scholars are doing. Some areas such as marketing and business, they already developed more innovative theory and concept and research method.
Yes,
so
that's right.
In my case, I bring my camera and then take a picture. Oh, I use maybe this idea and then how apply this idea to my area. So yeah, typically I visit there to correct the potential research idea. And then also maybe based on this idea, I contact Dr. Park and my colleague, maybe what do you think about, we are sharing the idea, and then kind of some develop our own idea. So that's why do not think about only tourism and hospitality. You need to also think about other disciplines. So kind of convergence or interdisciplinary approach can bring the smart idea, I believe. So just enjoy maybe another conference and then make a friend from other area and then just sharing your idea and then try to understand what you conduct. That make you maybe create a new idea, I believe. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, Soyoung professor, she worked for the Florida Atlantic University, which is very familiar to me and my colleague over there. So this is a another good chance to collaborate with you and people over there. Okay.
Definitely. Florida Atlantic University is small. We're a small university, but it's a very nice location. If you're interested in working in Florida, I highly recommend thinking about the university when you're looking for the next job. Yes.
Yes. Okay, we have 3 minutes. One last
Yeah,
question.
if I may go, I think
Sure.
it would be the last question. As you mentioned, can you give a recommendation for people who are gonna study abroad? Because I'm gonna go to the US from this fall, and I think there are many students who are also interested in going abroad. So can you give any recommendation? I know that there are no divide, not that big divide because of the digital, but still, can you give us some recommendation?
I think being successful in the US, first of all, you need to make a lot of connections. In Korea, we rarely talk to different professors. We rarely connect with other researchers a lot, right? But in the US, it's really important that you get to know everyone because you never know who's going to recommend you to a potential job in the future. So try to be friends with anyone that comes across your way, be it in your department or be it in any other universities. I think that helped me a lot. A lot of professors, a lot of people who graduated first told me about job opportunities that were happening, and they will also tell you about what's going on in the job market. And one more, I think, is try to teach. This may be controversial, but for me, when I was in the job market, we only had 2 R1 schools open, and a lot of teaching schools were hiring, like Florida Atlantic University. And if you didn't have a teaching experience, you weren't able to, be a strong candidate. So you never know which school you'll be applying to. So try to teach as soon as you can. It doesn't have to be a TA. You can actually solo teach, right? That's our industry's strength. They let you teach from your 2nd or 3rd year. So try to teach a class solo. And I think that helps a lot.
Okay.
Thank you for the advice.
Okay, Dr. Soyoung Park, one last comment from you, and what do you feel and what are your impression about this research, colloquium?
I think everyone is very lucky to be participating in this seminar. When I received the seminar, the leaflet, I was like, can I be part of this seminar? There's just so many amazing researchers that's lined up to talk. And I think it'll be a really great opportunity for you guys to listen to these renowned scholars like Bing Pan, Nancy, McGehee, Catherine Koo, everyone who's on this list is such an amazing researcher. So I think you will learn a lot. And I can see that all of you are very enthusiastic about the seminar too. So I'm very excited how you'll be in the future and what kind of researchers that you are going to be. So please feel free to just contact me. You can email me, you can find me on LinkedIn and just message me too.
Very good. Okay, time is up. Time is flying, 2 hours, the seminar. So like Professor Park, she said is contact me if you need help. It's true, okay? Proactively contact her, and then you can discuss with your topic, method, whatever.
Yeah,
Okay.
even personal life. I remember randomly calling a faculty, a Korean female faculty, and asking her about marriage. Even just, if you have any questions, just reach out to people. People are kind, right? They will help you answer these questions.
Sure. Okay. Okay, this is it. We are very thankful to Dr. Soyoung Park and joined this research seminar and gave us very insightful, presentation and comment and her idea and her experience to us. Your next generation to her, so your mentors and can be your advisors. Okay. Okay, thank you very much, and I look forward to see you in a conference face to face someday.
Dr. Koo, thank you for
Okay.
inviting me. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. See you next week. Next week we have another Park, Dr. Sangwon Park. He is also very highly motivated and very good, researcher in this tourism, field. So look forward to see you again next week. Thank you. Bye bye. 김진영 교수님, bye bye.
예, 교수님 건강하십시오. 곧
네,
연락드리겠습니다.
박세영 교수님